Two agencies can work on the exact same brand, same product, same company, even the same ad platforms, and yet achieve two completely different results. It's the same brand, just completely different outcomes. And the reason it happens isn't obvious, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. We work with over 50 Shopify brands right now, most of them between the 3 to 50 million range, and I'm constantly seeing the same things come up over and over again. When we audit a brand that feels stuck, it's usually never the thing that they think it is. It's not the creative, it's not the targeting, it's not even the agency's effort. It's what the effort is pointed at. My name's Jay, I'm the founder of Lantern Soul. We've worked with over 500 brands on Shopify and generated over 150 million in revenue for these brands. I'm telling you that not to brag, just because I've seen this hundreds of times and I see the same repeated things show up over and over again. I've watched this play out literally dozens of times. So what actually happens when growth stalls? When a brand comes to us and says, it's not working out with our agency, one of the first things I do is look and see where's the effort being directed at. 9 times out of 10, the agency is doing things. Real thing. There's reports, there's calls, there's ongoing collaboration. It looks like it's progress, but the work is happening in an isolation. The pay team is optimizing for ROAS, the email team is optimizing for open rates, and collectively they're growing at half the speed that they should be. Because the channels aren't talking to each other and nobody's looking at the full complete picture. I did an audit recently, and a brand was sending 40 to 50,000 people to the website every month. Very solid numbers, solid traffic. The traffic wasn't the problem, but the conversion rate on the paid traffic was at 0.68%. Their organic traffic, however, a mere fraction of their paid traffic, was generating over 7% in conversion. That's not a rounding error, that's over a 10x improvement. And this agency had been scaling paid ads for over a year. So the answer to why isn't this growing is sitting right there in the front of the dashboard. That's 100% a diagnosis issue. If your agency started running ads before looking at the complete narrative, chances are they're missing out on some really critical and key information. Here's the channel optimization trap. There's a version of an agency that looks very busy, but it produces very little. Maybe that sounds familiar. You get weekly reports, you see the data, you see the performance, the campaign breakdown, the reports on the ad spend. There's always something to discuss. But if you zoom out and look at the revenue over the past 6 months, it's flat. There's not any material growth going on. That is what happens when you have channel optimization in isolation. When we take on a new brand, we don't just start looking at one channel at a time. Even if our engagement is specifically for paid ads, we look to understand the whole complete picture. Because oftentimes when a founder comes with you with the problems that they are seeing, they might not even have the correct diagnosis. Imagine going to the doctors and coming in with your self-diagnosis. Oh, doc, I have this problem, I have this disease. You would want to ask the expert first, is this a correct diagnosis? And so when we take on a brand, the first thing we do is look at the full complete picture. Look at how the conversion rate is across channels. How are the targeting and the acquisition? How is the overall LTV and retention, their AOV? The core metrics across any successful Shopify brand. And so sometimes it's the traffic, sometimes it's the site, often it's retention. And no one's been working on that because the initiative and the engagement was strictly paid ads. Most brands in this scenario have a math problem and no one has taken the time to sit down and properly run the numbers. Let me make this as simple as possible for you. Same brand, same budget, two completely different outcomes. This is version A, what most agencies do. Ad spend goes up 30%. Conversion stays flat because nobody's working on the site or the offer. Email is contributing around 10 to 15% of revenue. Most of those are coming from monthly promotions, and flow traffic is maybe contributing about 20 to 30% of that email revenue pie. The LTV is a guesswork. No one has that properly and precisely tracked. So no one knows the actual numbers as far as what is the break-even points, the contribution margin to hit scale and profitably scale the ad spend. And so the end result is revenue moves. It can be a slight increase, but usually your profitability starts shrinking and it gets more compressed. And growth feels like it's working until it isn't. This is version B, what an actual system looks like. Same traffic, same budget, same platform. Conversion rate improves 40% because someone diagnosed the landing pages that were being used in the ad funnel before even trying to increase the ad spend. Additionally, ad spend is now targeted and segmented based on where someone is in the buying cycle. Is it top of funnel? Is it middle of funnel? Bottom funnel? Those are completely different landing pages experience through a buyer's journey. Email is now contributing 25 to 30% of total revenue. And the flows are being run and diagnosed and optimized with continuous A/B testing every single day. LTV is known and constantly being recalibrated because those numbers alter over time, especially as you introduce new offers. And the whole team has alignment on what those numbers mean. What is the profitability line that is required to drive more performance across all the channels? And so the end result, higher LTV, scalable acquisition, and growth that compounds instead of plateauing. The difference between those outcomes isn't effort. Both agencies are working. The difference is that version B started with a proper diagnosis first before jumping straight into the weeds. Version A started with execution. And by the time that a brand realizes that they're on the wrong path with version A, it's typically too late and they're already 12, 18 months into this engagement and process. And now they're in scramble mode, trying to dig out of a potential hole that they now see themselves in. Email typically sits at 8 to 12% for many brands we see, when it should be closer to 25, even 30% plus if you have a consumable type of product. Email is usually not where the system breaks first because it's a very predictable, controllable channel, and it's because it's where retention either exists or it doesn't. We audit brands in this range continuously, and email is almost always underperforming. This is because it's being used like a campaign system instead of a tool and an asset. So here's what that looks like in practice. The brand sends a campaign email for whatever the holiday of the month is. Labor Day, Memorial Day, Mother's Day, you name it. Here's the discount, here's the month, here's the coupon code, please go to our checkout. What this does is it cheapens the brand's value. It becomes a discount brand, and it just becomes these temporary seasonal spikes without a predictable revenue flow. And so that's not really an email strategy, that's a calendar. The brands that we work with that are extracting 25 to 30% of total revenue from email, they're running a completely different playbook. They're continuously running, testing, and optimizing the flows because these are the assets in your business that work while you sleep. They're testing out new offers, working the sequences, and segmenting clients based on where they are at in their pre-journey or post-journey experience. These flows are running every single day in the background and again are an asset for your business. And every other marketing channel that you have, from the paid ads to the organic, are feeding into this email system, and that asset is continuing to work every single day for you. This is where the compounding happens. We had a subscription brand with a very strong product and a good repeat rate of 63% come to us. Their LTV was actually really solid, but they were treating their email list like one big mass mailer list and not completely segmenting between the different types. They had wholesale accounts, they had individual customers, they had people on subscriptions for consumable product, mind you. So people who should be coming back and making repeat purchases. And so what we did was separate these ICPs into completely different customer journeys and tailor a very specific message flow to each individual one. Instead of just treating it as like the mass list of, hey, here's the Mother's Day promotion, everyone eat. That's what most brands are doing. And so after segmenting properly, we immediately saw the results improved. We had much more dialed in messaging to the specific demographic, and we saw revenue go up. Instead of 15%, we started collecting 25%, and that's increasing to 30% and more this month. If you have a mix, especially of wholesale and individual consumers, you cannot treat this like just one giant list. It seems very basic, but you'd be surprised at how many $1 million plus brands are missing the fundamentals. Conversion plus lifetime value, it's not just traffic. At $1 million per year, it's typically a traffic problem. You're not getting enough customers into your front door. And so more ads, more organic, those will typically be your best levers to get more traffic into your store. At 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, it's usually not traffic that is the problem. You have the traffic, the question is what arrives after it comes. And this is where I see the playbook for brands who made it from 1 to 10 million being confused. Why was what was working previously not working now? The ROAS are getting thin, costs keep climbing, and the instinct is to fix the creative or add 10x more creative instead of taking a step back and looking at the entire system. But what usually is happening is simpler. The business economics cannot support the aggressive acquisition because of the LTV to the CAC ratio. The simple formula is customer acquisition cost compared against your lifetime value. If a customer is worth $250 to $300 over the extent of their lifetime, you can outbid your customers. But if you're dealing with an LTV of $80, that's a completely different ballgame. So here's the constant problem I see for brands, even doing 3 to 20 million, is they do not know their LTV. And if they do know it, the last time they calibrated it was months ago. And so they're not constantly checking this number and reminding themselves. They might not even know the difference between a 90-day LTV and a 12-month LTV. And these have completely different implications for your cash flows because product businesses are going to have a lot of cash flows tied up in their inventory and COGS. And so they completely misunderstand the math equation for how do we make this a very predictable growth engine. This changes everything downstream. This changes the entire equation for deciding how much you can spend to acquire a customer. This determines how aggressive your ad strategy can be and whether email should be a priority or an afterthought. So before you touch the ad account, know your numbers. What is the LTV? What is the AOV? What is your current CAC? And understand that LTV across the cash flow cycles that best replicate your brand, specifically keeping in mind with the product inventory that you're gonna have to be accounting for. I generally recommend knowing both the 90-day and the 12-month LTV. And so that's the growth engine. Everything else in it is just the details. But until you run the numbers, you are missing out and operating blind. So most brands don't realize which version they're running. Is it A or is it B? The reports look fine. The calls are being productive with their agency. But the systems underneath all of it are very suboptimal. And by the time it becomes obvious, it's already too late. They've lost 6 months, 12 months or more, and now they're in panic and scramble mode. So if you're in the 3 to 50 million range, and this sounds familiar, you're not in crisis mode, but you're not seeing the growth that you want to see. Things aren't compounding in the way that you are expecting. Reach out, and if you qualify, we'll give you a free diagnosis. We do audits, we look at your traffic sources, we understand your conversion rate between these acquisition channels, and we do a deep dive into all your flows, automations, and all the assets that come up into your business. And then lastly, we help you run the numbers. This is the most important gap that too many businesses are skipping, is running the numbers. If that's useful to you, click on the link below, apply for a free audit. We'll do a very comprehensive audit top to bottom and look at the full complete picture instead of looking at channels in isolation. Like and subscribe. Stay tuned for the next video.